The fluorescent lights in the courtroom felt like interrogation lamps bearing down on Simone's dark skin as she sat frozen in the defendant's chair. Her hands trembled in her lap, fingers twisted together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She'd imagined this day would be difficult, but nothing prepared her for the systematic destruction of her character happening right before her eyes. Mrs. Patterson, Derek's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Janet Torres, circled her like a predator. Isn't it true that you frequently flew into unprovoked rages during your marriage? No, that's not. Yes or no, Mrs. Patterson? Simone's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, started to object, but Janet steamrolled forward. Isn't it true that you neglected your household duties, spending entire days in bed claiming to be sick when you were perfectly fine? I had depression after the miscarriage, Simone said quietly, her voice barely carrying across the courtroom. The doctor said. A convenient excuse, Janet cut her off. Depression you claim to have had, yet you refused medication, correct? The side effects were. Yes or no? Yes, but. Thank you. Janet smiled like a cat with cream. And isn't it true that you became irrationally jealous, accusing my client of infidelity without any proof whatsoever? Simone's eyes flicked to Derek, sitting at the plaintiff's table in his expensive suit, looking every inch the successful businessman. His new girlfriend, no, his mistress, Gabrielle sat beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Gabrielle was everything Simone wasn't. Thin, perfectly made up, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than Simone's car payment. I found messages, Simone said, her voice stronger now. On his phone. Between him and. Messages you claim to have seen but mysteriously cannot produce? Janet raised an eyebrow. Messages that supposedly existed but conveniently disappeared? He deleted them. He changed his passwords. So you were snooping through your husband's private communications? Violating his privacy and trust. The judge, an older black man named Judge Williams. Wait, I can't use Williams. Let me change that to Judge Thompson. Watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. I had reason to suspect. Paranoid suspicions based on your deteriorating mental state, Janet said smoothly. Mrs. Patterson, how many jobs have you held in the last 5 years? Simone felt her cheeks burn. It's been difficult to maintain employment because... How many? 7. A murmur went through the courtroom. Janet let the number hang in the air like an accusation. 7 jobs in 5 years. And you left each one claiming the work environment was hostile or that you were being mistreated, correct? In some cases, yes, but... Always someone else's fault. Always the victim. Janet turned to the judge. Your Honor, the pattern is clear. Mrs. Patterson has a history of instability, paranoid accusations, and an inability to take responsibility for her own actions. She drove my client away with her baseless jealousy and erratic behavior. Now she wants to punish him financially for her own failures as a wife and partner. Simone felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give Derek the satisfaction. She looked at him again and found him smirking. Actually smirking at her humiliation. Their 8 years together had meant nothing. The nights she'd stayed up helping him build his consulting business, the sacrifices she'd made, the dreams they'd shared, all of it erased because he'd found someone younger and more exciting. Mr. Harrison stood. Your Honor, this is clearly a character assassination. Mrs. Patterson's employment history is irrelevant to the division of marital assets. It speaks to her claims that she contributed equally to the marriage, Janet countered. My client built a successful business through his own hard work while Mrs. Patterson drifted from job to job, contributing little to the household income and creating a hostile home environment with her paranoid accusations and emotional instability. That's not true. Simone finally snapped, her voice echoing in the courtroom. I supported him. I gave up my career in social work to help him start his business. I took those terrible jobs to pay our bills while he built his client base. And yet you have no documentation of these alleged contributions, Janet said coldly. No business records showing your involvement, no proof of these sacrifices you claim to have made. Just more accusations and excuses. Simone opened her mouth to respond, but Mr. Harrison put a hand on her shoulder, silently telling her to stop. She slumped back in her chair, defeated. Derek leaned over to whisper something to Gabrielle, and they both laughed quietly. The sound cut through Simone like broken glass. This was the man she'd loved, the man she'd built a life with, and he was laughing at her destruction. Judge Thompson cleared his throat. Mr. Torres, do you have any actual evidence to present? Or are we just going to continue this character assassination? Wait, I made the lawyer's name Janet Torres but then called her Mr. Torres. Let me fix that to keep it consistent. The judge should say Ms. Torres. Your Honor, I'm establishing a pattern of behavior that explains the breakdown of this marriage, Janet said smoothly. I have testimony from Mr. Patterson's colleagues, friends, and family members who will attest to Mrs. Patterson's erratic behavior, her unfounded accusations, and her contribution to the deterioration of the marriage. Then call your witnesses, Judge Thompson said, sounding tired. For the next hour, Simone sat in silence as people she'd known for years took the stand and painted her as unstable, jealous, and difficult. Derek's business partner talked about how uncomfortable she'd made people at company events with her intense behavior. Derek's mother described her as cold and distant, a poor wife who didn't appreciate her son. Even their former neighbor testified that she'd heard Simone yelling at Derek through the walls, making him sound like the victim of domestic abuse. Each testimony felt like another nail in her coffin. Her lawyer tried to cross-examine, tried to poke holes in their stories, but the damage was done. The courtroom saw what Janet wanted them to see, a bitter, unstable woman trying to punish her husband for leaving her. By the time Janet rested her case, Simone felt hollowed out. She'd come to court hoping for fairness, for some recognition of what she'd sacrificed and what Derek had done to her. Instead, she was being portrayed as the villain in her own story. Mr. Harrison, are you ready to present your case? Judge Thompson asked. Mr. Harrison stood, gathering his papers. He'd warned Simone this would be tough, that Derek had hired one of the best divorce attorneys in the city, but she hadn't imagined this level of humiliation. Your Honor, if I may have a brief recess to confer with my client. The heavy courtroom doors burst open with a bang that made everyone jump. A girl stood in the doorway, small and thin, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks. Her hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, and her shoes were held together with duct tape. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. I need to talk, the girl shouted, her voice high and desperate. I need to tell the truth about him. She pointed directly at Derek with a shaking finger. I know what he did. I saw everything. The courtroom erupted into chaos. The bailiff rushed toward the girl, reaching for her arm, but she dodged around him with the quick movements of someone used to running from authority. Please, she cried out. You need to hear this. He's lying. They're both lying. Order. Judge Thompson's voice cut through the noise as he banged his gavel. Bailiff, please escort this young lady out of. No. The girl's voice cracked with desperation. She clutched a dirty backpack to her chest like a lifeline. I have proof. Real proof. Not just words, actual proof of what he's been doing. Simone stared at the girl in shock. She'd never seen her before in her life. Who was she? How did she know Derek? Derek had gone pale, his smug expression replaced by something that looked like panic. Gabrielle had pulled her hand away from his arm and sat very still, her perfectly made-up face frozen in confusion. Your Honor, Janet Torres said sharply, recovering quickly. This is clearly a stunt orchestrated by the defense. I move to have this child removed immediately and... I'm not part of any stunt, the girl shouted. I don't even know her. She pointed at Simone. I don't know anybody here except him. Her finger stabbed toward Derek again. I sleep in the alley behind his office building. I've been there for 3 months and I've seen things. Important things. Judge Thompson held up his hand for silence. The courtroom quieted, everyone leaning forward to hear what would happen next. The judge studied the girl with sharp eyes, taking in her ragged appearance and the fierce determination on her young face. What's your name, child? He asked, his voice gentler now. Tanya. Tanya Brooks. The girl took a hesitant step forward. I'm sorry for busting in like this, but I've been trying to figure out what to do for weeks. Then I saw the court schedule posted outside and I saw his name, Derek Patterson, and I knew I had to come. I knew I had to tell someone what I know. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, Janet protested. This child has no standing in this case. She's not a witness for either side. This is obviously a... I'd like to hear what she has to say, Simone's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, interjected. If she has relevant information. Relevant information from a homeless child who conveniently appears just as my client's case is succeeding? Janet's voice dripped with skepticism. Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate attempt to... Miss Torres, Judge Thompson said firmly. I will decide what is and isn't relevant in my courtroom. Young lady approached the bench. Tanya walked forward, her worn sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Despite her ragged appearance, she held her head high. When she reached the judge's bench, she looked up at him without flinching. "You say you sleep behind Mr. Patterson's office building?" Judge Thompson asked. "Yes, sir. In the alley between his building and the parking garage. There's a spot behind the dumpster where the security cameras can't see, and the steam from the heating vent keeps it warm." The judge's expression softened slightly. "And you've been there for 3 months?" "Yes, sir. Since October." It was now early January. Simone realized. This girl had been sleeping rough through the autumn and into winter. "And where are your parents, Tanya?" The girl's face closed off slightly. "Mom's gone. Dad's in jail. I was in foster care, but..." She shrugged. "I ran. The place they had me wasn't safe." Judge Thompson sighed heavily. "We'll need to address that situation, but first, tell me what you think you know about this case." "I know he's lying," Tanya said firmly, pointing at Derek again. "He's up there acting like he's some kind of victim, like she's the bad guy, but I've seen him with that blonde lady." She pointed at Gabrielle. "I've seen them together way before any divorce. I've heard them talking about her, about the wife, laughing about her, planning how to make her look crazy so she wouldn't get any money." Simone gasped. Derek shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. This child is clearly disturbed." "Sit down, Mr. Patterson," Judge Thompson ordered. Derek sat, but his face had gone red with anger. The judge turned back to Tanya. "These are serious accusations. You said you have proof?" "Yes, sir." Tanya hugged her backpack tighter. "I have papers. Lots of papers. See, Mr. Patterson, he throws stuff away in that dumpster behind his building. Important stuff that he thinks nobody will find because it all gets picked up and taken to the dump. But I'm in that alley every night, and sometimes I look through the trash for stuff I can use or sell." She opened her backpack and pulled out a crumpled manila folder stuffed with papers. 3 weeks ago I found this. I can't read all of it, some of the words are too big, but I know numbers and I know dates. And I know these papers show he's been hiding money and lying about stuff." Mr. Harrison was on his feet immediately. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess to examine these documents." "Objection." Janet Torres stood as well. "Your Honor, we have no way of verifying where these documents came from or whether they've been tampered with. This could be fabricated evidence planted by the defense." "I didn't plant anything." Tanya's voice rose. "I found them in the dumpster. I can show you exactly where. I can show you when he throws stuff away. It's always Thursday nights around 9 o'clock after his secretary leaves. I can tell you what he wears, what car he drives, everything." "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said urgently, "if these documents are what this young lady suggests, they could be crucial to establishing the true financial picture of the marriage. Mr. Patterson has claimed poverty in his asset disclosure, stating that his business barely breaks even. If there's evidence to the contrary..." "There's plenty of evidence," Tanya interrupted. "There's bank statements and papers about accounts in other countries and emails he printed out about moving money around. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew it looked important. I knew it looked like hiding." Derek was whispering frantically to Janet Torres, who looked increasingly worried. Judge Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying the scene before him. Simone could see him weighing options, considering procedures, thinking about what was fair versus what was legal. "Here's what we're going to do," he finally said. "We're going to take a 2-hour recess. Mr. Harrison, you and Miss Torres will both examine these documents. If they appear to be legitimate financial records pertaining to Mr. Patterson, we'll need to discuss how to proceed. In the meantime..." He looked at Tanya with concern. "Young lady, I'm going to have Child Protective Services contacted. You can't continue living on the streets." "I know," Tanya said quietly. I needed to do this first. I needed to tell the truth. My mom always said the truth matters even when it's hard." Something in the girl's voice made Simone's heart ache. Here was this child, barely more than a baby really, living in an alley and still trying to do what was right. She'd risked exposure, risked going back into the system she'd run from, just to tell the truth about people she didn't even know. "Thank you," Simone found herself saying. "Thank you, Tanya." The girl looked at her for the first time, really looked at her. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Two people from completely different worlds, connected by a moment of desperate honesty. "You're welcome," Tanya said simply. "He shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Nobody should." Judge Thompson banged his gavel. 2-hour recess. Bailiff, please ensure this young lady has something to eat and a safe place to wait. Lawyers, my chambers now. As the courtroom emptied, Simone watched Derek storm out with Gabrielle hurrying behind him. His confident smirk was gone, replaced by barely controlled fury. Good, she thought. Let him feel what it's like to have your life fall apart in public. For the first time since this nightmare began, Simone felt a tiny flicker of hope. The recess stretched longer than 2 hours. Simone sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, her knee bouncing with nervous energy. Through the frosted glass of the judge's chambers, she could see the silhouettes of the lawyers and the judge, their voices occasionally rising in heated discussion. Tanya sat on a bench nearby, flanked by a tired-looking woman from Child Protective Services. Someone had brought the girl a sandwich and a juice box, which she devoured in seconds. Now she sat picking at her fingernails, looking younger than her 12 years and infinitely weary. Simone wanted to talk to her, to thank her properly, but the CPS worker had made it clear that wouldn't be appropriate. Instead, Simone could only watch the girl who'd appeared out of nowhere to possibly save her life. Finally, after nearly 3 hours, the chamber doors opened. Mr. Harrison emerged first, his expression carefully neutral, but Simone caught the gleam in his eyes. Janet Torres came out behind him, her jaw tight with anger. Derek followed last, his face ashen. All parties back in the courtroom, the bailiff called. Simone took her seat with shaking hands. She noticed Derek wouldn't look at her now. He sat rigid in his chair, staring straight ahead while Gabrielle whispered urgently in his ear. Judge Thompson entered and settled himself behind the bench. He looked tired, like the last 3 hours had aged him. After reviewing the documents provided by Miss Brooks, he began, and conferring with both counsel, I've made several decisions. First, these documents appear to be legitimate financial records pertaining to Mr. Patterson's business dealings. Second, they reveal information that was not disclosed in Mr. Patterson's financial affidavit to this court. Third, this constitutes a serious enough discrepancy that we need to hear testimony about how these documents came into Miss Brooks' possession and what they reveal. He turned to Tanya, who straightened up in her seat. Miss Brooks, I'm going to ask you some questions. You're not in trouble, but I need you to tell the truth. Do you understand? Yes, sir, Tanya said clearly. Tell me in your own words about living in the alley behind Mr. Patterson's office building. Tanya took a breath and began. Her voice was steady, but Simone could hear the exhaustion underneath. I've been on the street since October. I ran from my foster home because it wasn't safe there. The dad in that house, he looked at me wrong, you know? And I told my caseworker, but she didn't believe me. So I left. Judge Thompson nodded sadly, like he'd heard similar stories before. I moved around at first, trying to find places to sleep where I wouldn't get bothered. Then I found the alley behind the office building on Merchant Street. It's good because there's that steam vent, like I said, and the dumpster blocks the wind. Plus, there's a coffee shop on the corner that throws away bagels every night, and I can get them before the trash truck comes. She spoke about this horror like she was describing a normal Tuesday. Simone felt sick thinking about this child surviving on thrown-away bagels and steam from a heating vent. The first couple weeks, I didn't pay attention to the people coming and going from the building, Tanya continued. But you learn pretty quick when you're on the streets that you gotta notice patterns. You gotta know when people show up, when they leave, who might cause trouble. So I started watching. And what did you observe about Mr. Patterson? Judge Thompson asked. At first, just normal stuff. He'd come to work around 8 in the morning, leave around 6. Sometimes later. But then I noticed Thursday nights were different. His secretary, a lady with red hair, she always left at 5 on Thursdays. But Mr. Patterson would stay later. And around 9 o'clock, he'd come out to the dumpster with boxes or bags of papers and throw them away. Every Thursday? The judge asked. Every single one. Like clockwork. Which seemed weird to me because the building has a shredder service. I've seen the truck come pick up the locked shredding bins. So why was he throwing papers in the regular dumpster? Janet Torres started to stand, probably to object, but Judge Thompson held up a hand. Continue, Miss Brooks. So one Thursday after he left, I looked in the dumpster. And I found all these papers with numbers and names of banks and stuff. I didn't understand most of it, but I kept some because, I don't know, it seemed important. It seemed like hiding. And what else did you observe? I saw him with the blonde lady, Ms. Gabrielle. Tanya pointed at Gabrielle, who flinched. This was back in October, way before the news said he and his wife were getting divorced. I remember the date because it was October 15th, my birthday. I was feeling pretty sorry for myself, 12 years old and sleeping in an alley. Then I saw them. What did you see? They came out the back door of his building around 7 at night. They were kissing and touching each other, like people do when they're together. He had his hands all over her. Then they got in his car and drove away. Derek had his head in his hands now. Gabrielle stared at the table. I saw them together lots of times after that, Tanya continued. Always late in the evening, always acting like they were trying to hide. Sometimes they'd sit in his car in the parking lot and talk. I could hear them sometimes when they had the windows down. What did you hear? Judge Thompson leaned forward. Plans. They talked about plans. About how he was going to divorce his wife but make it look like she was the crazy one. I heard Miss Gabrielle tell him he needed to document everything, every time the wife got upset or cried or complained about anything. She said to make her sound unstable in writing, keep emails and texts that made her look bad. Mr. Harrison was scribbling notes furiously. Janet Torres had gone very still. I heard them laugh about it, Tanya said, and her voice held an edge of anger now. They laughed about making her think she was losing her mind. There's a word for that. I heard it once. Gas something? Gaslighting, Simone whispered. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. Yeah, that. They were doing that on purpose. Making her doubt herself so she'd seem crazy when they got to court. Miss Brooks, Judge Thompson said gently, these are very serious accusations. Are you absolutely certain about what you heard? Yes, sir. I have good ears. You have to when you live on the streets. And I remember good too. I remember Miss Gabrielle saying, once we get her out of the way we can live how we want. She won't get a penny if we play this right. The courtroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Your Honor, Mr. Harrison stood. I request that Miss Brooks be allowed to testify about the documents she found. Objection, Janet said weakly. The chain of custody. The chain of custody is that Mr. Patterson threw them in a public dumpster, thereby abandoning any expectation of privacy, Mr. Harrison countered. They became public refuse, and Miss Brooks had every right to retrieve them. Judge Thompson nodded slowly. I'll allow it. Miss Brooks, tell us about the documents you found. Tanya pulled papers from her folder. Even from across the courtroom, Simone could see they were crumpled and stained, but the printing was still clear. These are bank statements, Tanya said, holding up several pages. They show an account at a bank in, I can't pronounce it. It's in Europe somewhere. The account has Mr. Patterson's name on it, and it has over $2 million in it. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Derek had claimed in his financial disclosure that he had less than $50,000 in assets. These papers here, Tanya continued, pulling out more documents, are about something called an LLC. It's a company name I don't recognize, but Mr. Patterson's signature is on all the papers. And this company owns real estate in 3 different states. Your Honor, these documents need to be properly authenticated, Janet Torres said desperately. We can't just take this child's word. The documents have Mr. Patterson's signature, his social security number, and his business letterhead, Mr. Harrison interjected. They can certainly be authenticated, but their existence is already evidence of fraud in the financial disclosure provided to this court. Judge Thompson examined the papers himself, his expression growing darker with each page. There's more, Tanya said quietly. These emails, Mr. Patterson printed them out and threw them away too. They're between him and Miss Gabrielle. They talk about moving money around so the wife can't find it. They talk about how to make the business look like it's failing when it's actually making a lot of money. They have a whole plan for hiding everything. She handed over a stack of printed emails. The judge read them, his jaw tightening. Mr. Patterson, Judge Thompson said, his voice like ice. Stand up. Derek stood slowly, looking like he might be sick. Did you or did you not sign a financial affidavit swearing that you disclosed all assets and income to this court? Yes, Your Honor, but... Yes or no, Mr. Patterson? Yes. And did that affidavit claim you had less than $50,000 in total assets? The business has been struggling. Yes or no? Yes, Derek admitted, his voice barely audible. Then you have some explaining to do. Judge Thompson's voice could have frozen fire. Because unless you've got a twin brother I don't know about, these documents show you've been lying to this court, defrauding your wife, and conspiring to commit what amounts to theft of marital assets. The tide had turned completely. Simone watched Derek crumble, watched his careful lies fall apart like a house of cards in the wind. And it was all because of a 12-year-old girl who decided that truth mattered more than her own safety. Simone would never forget that. Never. Judge Thompson called a recess, but this time it wasn't for deliberation. It was for Derek's lawyer to have a very serious conversation with her client about the deep hole he'd dug himself into. The judge also ordered that all the documents Tanya had recovered be immediately photocopied and authenticated by a forensic accountant. Simone stood in the hallway, her hands shaking from adrenaline. Mr. Harrison touched her shoulder gently. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "We still have work to do. But this changes everything." "That little girl saved me," Simone whispered. "She doesn't even know me and she saved my life." "She's a brave kid," Mr. Harrison agreed. "Though I'm worried about what happens to her next." The CPS worker said she'd been reported missing from her foster home. They'll have to place her somewhere. Simone's heart ached at the thought of Tanya going back into a system that had already failed her once. But that was a problem for later. Right now, she needed to focus on what was happening in her own case. When they reconvened, the atmosphere in the courtroom had completely changed. Janet Torres looked like she'd aged 10 years. Derek sat slumped in his chair, no longer the confident businessman. Gabrielle had moved away from him, putting physical distance between herself and the disaster unfolding. A forensic accountant named Dr. Patricia Green took the stand. She was a severe-looking woman in her 50s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Dr. Green," Mr. Harrison began, "you've had approximately 90 minutes to examine the documents provided by Miss Brooks. What have you found?" "I've found evidence of extensive financial fraud," Dr. Green said bluntly. "The documents include bank statements for 3 accounts that were not disclosed in Mr. Patterson's financial affidavit. These accounts contain a combined total of approximately $3.2 million. Another gasp rippled through the courtroom. Derek had his head in his hands again. "Additionally," Dr. Green continued, "I found documentation of several LLCs registered in Mr. Patterson's name, also not disclosed. These LLCs own commercial property in Nevada, Florida, and Texas with a combined estimated value of approximately $1.8 million. So, to be clear," Mr. Harrison said, "Mr. Patterson claimed to have less than $50,000 in assets, but these documents suggest he actually has over $5 million? "At minimum," Dr. Green confirmed. "This is only what I could verify in the limited time available. A complete forensic audit would likely reveal additional hidden assets." "And the emails Miss Brooks recovered, what did those reveal?" Dr. Green's expression hardened. "Those emails constitute clear evidence of conspiracy to defraud. Mr. Patterson and Ms. Hayward," she nodded toward Gabrielle, "explicitly discussed strategies for hiding assets from Mrs. Patterson. They discussed creating false business expenses to make the company appear less profitable. They discussed timing the filing of divorce papers to coincide with manufactured financial difficulties." "Can you give us specific examples?" "Certainly. In an email dated September 14th of last year, Ms. Hayward wrote to Mr. Patterson, 'Make sure you move the Nevada property into the new LLC before you file. Use your cousin's address for the registration. She'll never think to look there.'" Simone felt sick. September 14th. That was 2 weeks before Derek had sat her down and told her he wanted a divorce. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. In another email, Dr. Green continued, dated October 2nd, Mr. Patterson wrote to Ms. Hayward, "I talked to Janet about the mental health angle. She thinks if we can document enough incidents of Simone being unstable, we can argue she's not competent to manage finances. That way we can ask for full control of business assets and she won't have standing to challenge it." That one hurt even more. They planned to paint her as mentally incompetent. To take away not just her money but her very credibility and autonomy. Finally, Dr. Green said, in an email dated November 10th, Ms. Hayward wrote, "Keep pushing her buttons. The more emotional she gets, the crazier she looks. Document everything. We need her to seem unhinged when we get to court." Simone remembered November 10th. That was the night Derek had come home late, smelling of perfume, and when she'd asked about it, he'd blown up at her, calling her paranoid and controlling. She'd cried and yelled back and he'd recorded the whole thing on his phone. That recording had been played in court earlier today, making her sound hysterical while his calm, reasonable voice asked her why she was acting this way. It had all been planned. All of it. "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said, his voice ringing with righteous anger, "what we have here is not a marriage that fell apart. What we have is a calculated, premeditated fraud perpetrated against my client. Mr. Patterson didn't just have an affair and want a divorce. He systematically gaslighted his wife, hid millions of dollars in assets, and conspired with his mistress to destroy my client's credibility and leave her destitute." "Objection," Janet Torres said, but her heart wasn't in it. "These allegations are supported by documentary evidence," Mr. Harrison cut her off. "Emails written by your client and Ms. Hayward in their own words. Bank statements bearing your client's signature. Property records showing his name on deeds. Your Honor, Mr. Patterson didn't just lie to his wife. He lied to this court under oath. He committed perjury when he signed that financial affidavit. Judge Thompson's face had gone hard as stone. Miss Torres, does your client wish to make a statement? Janet Torres leaned over to confer with Derek. Their whispered conversation grew heated. Finally, she straightened up. Your Honor, my client wishes to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I see. The judge's voice dripped with disgust. Mr. Patterson, do you understand that by invoking the Fifth Amendment, you're effectively refusing to explain these documents or defend your financial affidavit? Derek stood on shaky legs. Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that this court will draw appropriate inferences from your refusal to testify? Yes, Your Honor. Sit down. The judge turned to Gabrielle, who'd been trying to make herself invisible. Miss Hayward, you're not a party to this divorce, but you're mentioned extensively in these emails. Do you have anything to say? Gabrielle stood up, her perfect composure finally cracking. Your Honor, I didn't know the emails would be used like this. I was just trying to help Derek. Help him defraud his wife? No. We were in love. I just wanted us to be together. I didn't think. Another gasp rippled through the courtroom. Derek had his head in his hands again. Additionally, Dr. Green continued, I found documentation of several LLCs registered in Mr. Patterson's name, also not disclosed. These LLCs own commercial property in Nevada, Florida, and Texas with a combined estimated value of approximately $1.8 million. So, to be clear, Mr. Harrison said, Mr. Patterson claimed to have less than $50,000 in assets, but these documents suggest he actually has over $5 million? At minimum, Dr. Green confirmed. This is only what I could verify in the limited time available. A complete forensic audit would likely reveal additional hidden assets. And the emails Miss Brooks recovered, what did those reveal? Dr. Green's expression hardened. Those emails constitute clear evidence of conspiracy to defraud. Mr. Patterson and Ms. Hayward, she nodded toward Gabrielle, explicitly discussed strategies for hiding assets from Mrs. Patterson. They discussed creating false business expenses to make the company appear less profitable. They discussed timing the filing of divorce papers to coincide with manufactured financial difficulties. Can you give us specific examples? Certainly. In an email dated September 14th of last year, Ms. Hayward wrote to Mr. Patterson, make sure you move the Nevada property into the new LLC before you file. Use your cousin's address for the registration. She'll never think to look there. Simone felt sick. September 14th. That was 2 weeks before Derek had sat her down and told her he wanted a divorce. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. In another email, Dr. Green continued, dated October 2nd, Mr. Patterson wrote to Ms. Hayward, I talked to Janet about the mental health angle. She thinks if we can document enough incidents of Simone being unstable, we can argue she's not competent to manage finances. That way we can ask for full control of business assets and she won't have standing to challenge it. That one hurt even more. They planned to paint her as mentally incompetent. To take away not just her money but her very credibility and autonomy. Finally, Dr. Green said, in an email dated November 10th, Ms. Hayward wrote, keep pushing her buttons. The more emotional she gets, the crazier she looks. Document everything. We need her to seem unhinged when we get to court. Simone remembered November 10th. That was the night Derek had come home late, smelling of perfume, and when she'd asked about it, he'd blown up at her, calling her paranoid and controlling. She'd cried and yelled back and he'd recorded the whole thing on his phone. That recording had been played in court earlier today, making her sound hysterical while his calm, reasonable voice asked her why she was acting this way. It had all been planned. All of it. Your Honor, Mr. Harrison said, his voice ringing with righteous anger, what we have here is not a marriage that fell apart. What we have is a calculated, premeditated fraud perpetrated against my client. Mr. Patterson didn't just have an affair and want a divorce. He systematically gaslighted his wife, hid millions of dollars in assets, and conspired with his mistress to destroy my client's credibility and leave her destitute. Objection, Janet Torres said, but her heart wasn't in it. These allegations are supported by documentary evidence. Mr. Harrison cut her off. Emails written by your client and Ms. Hayward in their own words. Bank statements bearing your client's signature. Property records showing his name on deeds. Your Honor, Mr. Patterson didn't just lie to his wife. He lied to this court under oath. He committed perjury when he signed that financial affidavit. Judge Thompson's face had gone hard as stone. Miss Torres, does your client wish to make a statement? Janet Torres leaned over to confer with Derek. Their whispered conversation grew heated. Finally she straightened up. Your Honor, my client wishes to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I see. The judge's voice dripped with disgust. Mr. Patterson, do you understand that by invoking the Fifth Amendment, you're effectively refusing to explain these documents or defend your financial affidavit? Derek stood on shaky legs. Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that this court will draw appropriate inferences from your refusal to testify? Yes, Your Honor. Sit down. The judge turned to Gabrielle, who'd been trying to make herself invisible. Miss Hayward, you're not a party to this divorce, but you're mentioned extensively in these emails. Do you have anything to say? Gabrielle stood up, her perfect composure finally cracking. Your Honor, I didn't know the emails would be used like this. I was just trying to help Derek. Help him defraud his wife? No. We were in love. I just wanted us to be together. I didn't think. You didn't think conspiring to hide millions of dollars and destroy a woman's reputation was wrong? Judge Thompson's voice could have cut glass. Gabrielle's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She sat back down, tears running down her face. The judge took a long breath, visibly trying to control his anger. Here's what's going to happen, he said. I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all of Mr. Patterson's assets, including any accounts or properties that have been discovered through these documents. I'm appointing Dr. Green as a special master to conduct a complete forensic audit of all Mr. Patterson's finances. I'm also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible perjury, fraud, and conspiracy charges. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. Furthermore, Judge Thompson continued, I'm finding in favor of Mrs. Patterson on all disputed issues. Given Mr. Patterson's proven dishonesty, I have no confidence in any of his testimony or claims. The division of marital assets will be determined after Dr. Green completes her audit, but I'm preliminarily ordering that Mrs. Patterson receive no less than 60% of all marital assets, given Mr. Patterson's egregious conduct. Your Honor, Janet Torres tried one last time, my client? Your client is lucky I don't hold him in contempt right now, the judge snapped. He lied to this court. He attempted to defraud his wife of her rightful share of marital property. He and his girlfriend conspired to destroy an innocent woman's reputation and mental health. I have been a judge for 23 years, Miss Torres, and I have never seen such calculated cruelty in a divorce case. He turned to Simone, and his expression softened slightly. Mrs. Patterson, I apologize that you had to endure what happened in this courtroom today. The accusations made against you were based on a foundation of lies and manipulation. I want to be clear that this court finds no evidence that you were an unfit wife or that you suffer from the mental instability that was alleged. You were the victim of an elaborate and cruel fraud. Simone couldn't speak. Tears were flowing freely now, but they were tears of relief, of vindication, of pure overwhelming emotion. Thank you, she finally managed to whisper. Judge Thompson looked over at Tanya, who'd been sitting quietly through all the testimony. Miss Brooks, you did a very brave thing today. You told the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. You helped prevent a serious injustice. I want you to know that what you did matters. Tanya nodded, looking down at her hands. I'm going to make sure you're placed somewhere safe, the judge continued. Somewhere you'll be protected and cared for. You deserve that. Thank you, sir, Tanya said quietly. Judge Thompson banged his gavel. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a status update on the forensic audit. Until then, Mr. Patterson, you are not to dispose of, transfer, or hide any assets. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Derek said, his voice hollow. Court is adjourned. As everyone stood, Simone looked across the courtroom at Derek. He looked back at her, and for just a moment she saw something in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe just fear of the consequences he was facing. Either way, she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering love. Just emptiness where he used to be. She turned away and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The news spread fast. By the next morning, Derek Patterson's spectacular court implosion was the talk of the city's legal community. Mr. Harrison called Simone to warn her that reporters might come around asking questions. Don't talk to anyone, he advised. The criminal investigation is just getting started, and anything you say could affect the case. But Simone wasn't interested in talking to reporters anyway. She was too busy trying to process what had happened. In the span of a few hours, her life had gone from complete destruction to, what? Victory? Justice. It didn't feel like either of those things yet. It felt surreal. She couldn't stop thinking about Tanya. The girl who'd saved her was somewhere in the foster care system now, probably scared and uncertain about what would happen next. Simone wanted to help her somehow, but Mr. Harrison had been clear that there were legal boundaries. She couldn't just swoop in and try to rescue the kid no matter how much she wanted to. 3 days after the court hearing, Dr. Patricia Green's preliminary audit results came in. Mr. Harrison called Simone to his office to review them. "Sit down," he said, and his expression told her this was going to be big. The full audit was even worse than what had been revealed in court. Derek had been systematically hiding money for over 4 years. The offshore accounts alone contained nearly $4 million. The real estate holdings were worth another $2.3 million. There were investment accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and even a yacht registered to one of his shell companies. Total marital assets come to approximately $8.7 million, Dr. Green explained, sitting across the conference table from Simone. Mr. Patterson's claimed $50,000 represented less than 1% of the actual value. Simone felt dizzy. $8 million? Yes. And that's just what I've found so far. There may be more. I had no idea. I knew the business was doing well, but I thought. She trailed off, remembering Derek's constant complaints about cash flow, about how tight money was, about how they needed to be careful with spending. All lies. Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Green said gently, I've been doing this work for 30 years. What your husband did to you was one of the most elaborate financial frauds I've encountered in a divorce case. He created multiple layers of shell companies, used family members' names on some accounts, even backdated documents to make it look like certain assets were acquired before your marriage. Can he go to jail for this? Simone asked. That's up to the district attorney, Mr. Harrison said. But yes, perjury and fraud charges are definitely on the table. The DA's office is very interested in this case. Over the next few weeks, more details emerged. The DA's investigation revealed that Derek had learned these asset-hiding techniques from Gabrielle, who worked as a financial consultant and had helped several of her clients hide money in divorces. She'd applied the same strategies to Derek's situation, never expecting a homeless 12-year-old to literally dig their secrets out of the trash. Gabrielle tried to cooperate with investigators to get a lighter sentence, which meant she provided even more evidence against Derek. She turned over text messages, more emails, and recordings of conversations where they'd planned the whole scheme. In one particularly damning recording, Derek could be heard saying, Simone's too trusting. She'll never figure it out. By the time we're done, she'll be grateful to get anything. That one made Simone's blood boil. But it also crystallized something for her. Derek hadn't just betrayed her love. He'd counted on her trusting nature, her desire to see the best in people, and he'd weaponized those qualities against her. She would never let anyone do that to her again. The final court hearing came 6 weeks after Tanya's dramatic appearance. This time, the courtroom was packed with reporters and curious lawyers who'd heard about the case. Derek showed up looking defeated, his expensive suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. Judge Thompson didn't waste time. Mr. Patterson, in light of the evidence presented by the forensic audit and the district attorney's ongoing investigation, this court finds that you perpetrated a massive fraud against your wife in this court. You lied under oath. You hid millions of dollars in marital assets. You conspired with Ms. Hayward to destroy your wife's mental health and credibility. Derek stood with his head bowed, saying nothing. The court awards Mrs. Patterson 70% of all marital assets, Judge Thompson continued. Given the egregious nature of your conduct, she is entitled to more than the standard 50-50 split. The remaining 30% is yours to keep, assuming you can access it from prison should the criminal case proceed as expected. 70% of $8.7 million. Simone did the math in her head. Over $6 million. Money that Derek had tried to steal from her. Money that would have left her destitute while he lived in luxury with Gabrielle. Additionally, the judge said, Mr. Patterson will pay all of Mrs. Patterson's legal fees, including the forensic accountant's costs. He will also pay punitive damages in the amount of $100,000 for emotional distress caused by his fraud. Furthermore, I'm granting Mrs. Patterson's request for a restraining order. Mr. Patterson, you are not to contact your ex-wife in any way. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her home or workplace. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Derek said, his voice barely audible. I hope you do, Mr. Patterson, because I mean every word. You deliberately set out to destroy another human being for your own profit and pleasure. You showed no remorse, no conscience, no basic human decency. The only reason you didn't succeed is because a homeless child had more integrity than you. The judge looked at Simone. Mrs. Patterson, I hope you can rebuild your life with these resources. You deserve peace and happiness after what you've endured. Thank you, Your Honor, Simone said, her voice steady. I intend to do exactly that. After court, reporters swarmed them in the hallway. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust in her face. Mr. Harrison ran interference, but one reporter's question made it through. Mrs. Patterson, how does it feel to know your husband tried to steal millions from you? Simone stopped and looked directly at the camera. It feels like a lesson learned, she said clearly. People will show you who they really are if you pay attention. I'm grateful for the truth, no matter how painful it was to discover. What's next for you? Living my life, Simone said simply. On my own terms. Without lies, without manipulation, without anyone who doesn't value me. She walked away from the cameras, from the courthouse, from Derek and everything he represented. The satisfaction of that moment, of walking away with her dignity intact and her future secure, was sweeter than any revenge she could have imagined. 3 months after the final divorce decree, Simone sat in a coffee shop reading the newspaper. The headline made her smile. Local businessman sentenced to 5 years for fraud and perjury. Derek had tried to plea bargain, but the DA hadn't been interested in going easy on him. The case had become high profile, and they wanted to send a message that fraud and divorce cases would be prosecuted aggressively. Combined with evidence of tax evasion that the IRS had discovered during their own investigation, Derek was looking at serious prison time. Gabrielle had gotten 3 years probation and lost her license to work as a financial consultant. She'd also been named in a civil lawsuit by several of her former clients whose ex-spouses had discovered she'd helped hide assets in their divorces too. Her career was over. Simone felt no joy in their suffering, but she felt no pity either. They had made their choices. These were the consequences. What did make her happy was thinking about Tanya. Through her lawyer, Simone had arranged to fund a trust for the girl's education and living expenses. The money would be managed by a professional trustee until Tanya turned 18, and it would cover private school, college, and whatever else she needed. More importantly, the judge had allowed Simone to be involved in Tanya's case as a concerned party. With the help of a good family lawyer, they'd found Tanya a foster home with a retired teacher named Mrs. Eleanor Baptiste, a warm Haitian woman with grown children who'd been fostering kids for years. Tanya was thriving there, catching up on her education and starting to heal from her time on the streets. Simone had been allowed to visit twice, brief supervised meetings where she could thank Tanya properly and see how she was doing. The girl was still guarded, still showed signs of the trauma she'd experienced, but there was hope in her eyes now. Why did you help me? Simone had asked during their second visit. You didn't know me. You could have just stayed quiet. Tanya had thought about it for a while before answering. My mom used to say that when you see someone being hurt and you don't do anything, you become part of the hurt, she'd finally said. I saw what he was doing to you in that courtroom. I heard them laughing about it in that alley. It wasn't right. Mom would have wanted me to speak up. Your mom sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was. Tanya's eyes had gotten shiny with tears. She got sick. We didn't have insurance. By the time she finally went to the hospital, it was too late. Dad couldn't handle it. That's why he ended up in jail. He started drinking, made bad choices. I'm sorry, Simone had said, meaning it. It's okay. Not your fault. Tanya had wiped her eyes. Are you doing better now? Did you get your money? I did. Thanks to you. Good. Tanya had smiled then, a real smile. You deserved it. You seem nice. Like the kind of person who wouldn't hurt people on purpose. That conversation stuck with Simone. The kind of person who wouldn't hurt people on purpose. That's what she wanted to be, what she'd always tried to be. Derek had taken advantage of that, had seen her kindness as weakness. But Tanya had seen it as something worth protecting. Now, sitting in the coffee shop, Simone thought about her future. She had money now, more than she'd ever imagined having. She could do anything she wanted. Travel, start a business, buy a house, invest and live off the returns. But what she really wanted was to do something that mattered. Something that would make the pain she'd gone through mean something. She opened her laptop and started researching. Women's shelters. Legal aid organizations. Financial literacy programs. There had to be a way to use her resources and her experience to help other women who were going through what she'd survived. By the time she left the coffee shop, she had the beginnings of a plan. It would take time to develop properly, to do it right. But for the first time in years, Simone felt excited about her future. That night, she lay in bed in her new apartment. A bright, modern space with big windows and hardwood floors, nothing like the house she'd shared with Derek, and thought about how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been sitting in a courtroom being destroyed piece by piece. She'd felt helpless, humiliated, broken. She genuinely believed Derek would win, that she'd end up with nothing, that the lies he told about her would become the truth in everyone's eyes. Then a 12-year-old girl had crashed through those courtroom doors and changed everything. Simone pulled out her phone and looked at the photo Mrs. Baptiste had sent earlier that day. It showed Tanya on her first day at her new school, wearing a crisp uniform, her hair neatly braided, holding a backpack full of new school supplies. She was smiling tentatively at the camera, still not quite sure she was allowed to be happy but getting there. "Thank you," Simone whispered to the photo. "Thank you for being braver than any of us." She fell asleep thinking about the future, about possibilities, about second chances. Tomorrow she'd start building something new. Something good. Something that would help make sure other women didn't have to face what she'd faced alone. The perfect revenge, she'd realized, wasn't destroying Derek. It was building a life so good, so meaningful, so full of purpose that his betrayal became nothing more than a footnote in her story. A dark chapter that led to something brighter. That was the kind of revenge that lasted. Simone stood in front of the building on 5th Street, staring up at the old brick facade. It had been a law office once, then sat empty for years. Now it could be something new. Something important. "What do you think?" her real estate agent asked. "It needs work, but the bones are good." "I'll take it," Simone said. The agent blinked. "Don't you want to see the inside first? Have an inspection?" "I've already seen it 3 times, Simone reminded her. "And yes, get an inspection. But I know this is the right place." It was right because it was in the neighborhood where she'd grown up, where women like her mother had struggled to make ends meet, where financial literacy and legal help were desperately needed but hard to find. If she was going to start an organization to help women, this was where it needed to be. Over the next 3 months, Simone threw herself into the work of setting up her nonprofit. She called it Truth Matters, after what Tanya had said about her mother's beliefs. The organization would provide free legal consultations, financial planning services, and support groups for women going through divorces, especially those involving financial abuse or manipulation. She hired a part-time lawyer fresh out of law school who was passionate about family law. She recruited a financial planner who'd herself survived an abusive marriage. She set up a small office, installed computers, created a website. Every day brought new challenges, new problems to solve, new things to learn. But it also brought purpose. For the first time since her marriage fell apart, Simone woke up excited to start her day. Her therapist, Dr. Monica Freeman, helped her work through the trauma of what Derek had done. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the systematic destruction of her confidence. It had left deeper wounds than Simone had realized. "You're doing grief work," Dr. Freeman explained during one session. "Not just for the marriage but for the person you thought he was. For the life you thought you were building." "I feel stupid," Simone admitted. "How did I not see it? All those signs, all those red flags." "You saw them," Dr. Freeman said gently. "You asked questions. You expressed concerns. But he had answers for everything, didn't he? He made you doubt your own perceptions. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you distrust yourself more than you distrust the liar." "I don't want to be that naive again." "There's a difference between being trusting and being naive," the therapist said. "Trusting people is a good quality. Derek exploited that quality. That's on him, not you. Your job now is to learn to trust yourself again. To believe your instincts. To know that you can handle whatever comes." Those sessions helped. Slowly, Simone started to feel like herself again. Not the person she'd been during the marriage. That version of her was gone. But someone new. Someone stronger. She also started rebuilding her social life. During the marriage, Derek had systematically isolated her from friends. He'd always had reasons why they shouldn't go to this party or that dinner, why her friends were too demanding or too negative. She'd gradually lost touch with people who cared about her. Now she reached out to her old college roommate, Cheryl, who'd been trying to reconnect for years. "I'm sorry I disappeared," Simone said when they met for lunch. "I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late." "I know," Cheryl said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I tried to say something a few times but you were so deep in it. I'm just glad you got out." Thanks to a 12-year-old with a better moral compass than most adults. Cheryl had read about the case in the news. "That girl is amazing. How's she doing?" "Really well. She's in a good foster home, getting A's in school. I set up a trust fund for her education. Of course you did. Cheryl smiled. You always did have the biggest heart. Derek called it weak. Derek was an idiot who didn't deserve you. They talked for hours, catching up on years of missed time. Cheryl was married now with 2 kids, working as a pediatric nurse. Her life seemed so normal, so stable. Simone felt a small pang of envy, but mostly she felt happy for her friend. What about you? Cheryl asked. Are you thinking about dating again? God, no. Simone shook her head. I can't even imagine trusting someone like that right now. That's okay. You've got time. Focus on yourself first. That was exactly what Simone was doing. She joined a book club, started taking evening classes in nonprofit management, even signed up for a cooking class, something she'd always wanted to do but Derek had dismissed as a waste of time. Every small act of independence felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, Truth Matters officially opened its doors. Simone stood in the renovated office space, looking at the comfortable waiting room, the private consultation spaces, the community room where they'd hold support groups and workshops. A woman named Patricia Jordan was their first client. She was in her 40s, married for 15 years, and her husband had recently started showing signs of financial infidelity, hiding statements, being secretive about money, making large withdrawals without explanation. I feel crazy, Patricia said, sitting in Simone's office. He says I'm paranoid, that I'm looking for problems where there aren't any. But I know something's wrong. I can feel it. You're not crazy, Simone said firmly. And your feelings are valid. Let me tell you a story about what happened to me. She shared pieces of her own experience, not to make it about her, but to help Patricia understand she wasn't alone. That what she was feeling and experiencing had a name. That there were patterns to this kind of behavior. What do I do? Patricia asked, tears in her eyes. First, we're going to connect you with our lawyer who'll explain your rights. Then our financial planner will help you document everything and understand your financial situation. If your husband is hiding assets, we'll help you find them. And through it all you'll have support. You won't be alone. Patricia left that day with a plan, with resources, with hope. And Simone felt something click into place. This was what she was meant to do. Turn her pain into purpose. Help others avoid the trap she'd fallen into. That evening she got a call from Mrs. Baptiste, Tanya's foster mother. I wanted to let you know Tanya's doing wonderfully, Mrs. Baptiste said in her warm Haitian accent. She's reading at grade level now and she joined the school's debate team. Can you imagine? Simone could imagine it perfectly. Tanya, who'd stood up in a courtroom and demanded truth, would be brilliant on a debate team. There's something else, Mrs. Baptiste continued. Tanya asked if she could write you a letter. I told her she could, but I wanted to check with you first. I know there are boundaries. I would love a letter from her, Simone said. The letter arrived 2 days later. Tanya's handwriting was still a bit shaky, but getting stronger. Dear Miss Simone, Mrs. Baptiste said I could write to you. I wanted to say thank you for everything you did for me. The trust fund and helping me find a good home and everything. Nobody ever did stuff like that for me before. I know I'm supposed to say you don't owe me anything, that I just did what was right in court. But the truth is you didn't have to help me after. You could have just been glad you won and forgot about me. But you didn't. Mrs. Baptiste told me about your new organization helping women. That's really cool. My mom would have liked that. She always said women have to look out for each other because nobody else will. I'm doing good in school. I like debate team. Mr. Henderson, the teacher, says I have a gift for finding the truth in arguments. I told him I had practice from living on the streets. You learn to spot lies pretty quick when your safety depends on it. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. You're a good person. Don't let what happened with your husband make you think you're not. Your friend Tanya. Simone read the letter 3 times, crying a little more each time. This child, this extraordinary child who'd been through so much, was worried about Simone's self-esteem. She wrote back immediately. Dear Tanya, thank you for your beautiful letter. You're right that I didn't owe you anything legally, but I owed you everything morally. You saved my life in that courtroom. Not just my financial life but my sense of self. You reminded me that truth matters, that courage matters, that doing the right thing matters. I'm so proud of you for doing well in school. Your debate teacher is absolutely right. You have a gift for finding truth. Hold on to that. The world needs people like you who aren't afraid to speak up. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She raised you to be brave and honest, and those qualities shone through even when you were at your lowest point. That's a testament to her and to you. I hope we can stay in touch as you grow up. I'd love to hear about your adventures in debate, in school, in life. And if you ever need anything, advice, support, or just someone to listen, I'm here. You're a remarkable young woman, Tanya. Don't ever forget that. With gratitude and respect, Simone. That exchange began a correspondence that would continue for years. Simone became a mentor to Tanya, not replacing her foster mother but complementing the support system the girl was building. And Tanya, in her own way, kept Simone grounded and focused on what mattered. 6 months into running Truth Matters, Simone was helping 15 to 20 women a month. Some were in crisis situations. Others were just starting to have suspicions. All of them needed support, information, and someone to believe them when they said something was wrong. Simone gave them what she'd needed and hadn't had: validation, resources, and hope. And in giving those things to others, she found her own healing accelerating. She was building something beautiful from the ashes of her destroyed marriage. She was taking the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transforming it into something that helped others. That, she realized, was the best revenge of all. A year after the trial, Simone was invited to speak at a conference on financial abuse in marriages. She almost said no. Public speaking terrified her, but Cheryl convinced her to do it. Your story needs to be heard, Cheryl insisted. Think about all the women out there who are going through what you went through. They need to know they're not alone. So Simone wrote a speech, practiced it until her voice was steady, and flew to Chicago for the conference. She spoke to a room of 200 people: lawyers, therapists, social workers, advocates. She told them about Derek's gaslighting, about the hidden assets, about standing in that courtroom feeling like her life was ending. And then she told them about Tanya. A 12-year-old girl who was living in an alley behind a dumpster saw what was happening and decided to act, Simone said, her voice clear and strong. She risked her own safety to tell the truth. She didn't know me. She had no reason to help me except that she believed it was the right thing to do. The room was silent, everyone hanging on her words. Tanya saved my life that day. But she also taught me something crucial: truth has power. Even when you're powerless, when you're living on the streets with nothing to your name, truth still matters. Truth can change everything. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of women approached her with their own stories. Some were survivors. Others were advocates. All of them were moved by what she'd shared. A publisher who'd been in the audience approached her during the cocktail reception. Have you ever thought about writing a book? The woman asked. Your story needs a wider audience. I'm not a writer, Simone protested. You don't have to be. We have editors. What you have is an important story that could help thousands of women recognize the signs of financial abuse. Will you think about it? Simone thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, she said. I'll do it. Writing the book was harder than running the nonprofit. It meant reliving every painful moment of her marriage and divorce. It meant being honest about her own mistakes, her own blindness, her own complicity in believing Derek's lies. But it also meant creating something permanent. A resource. A roadmap. A warning sign for other women. She called the book Hidden Numbers: Recognizing and Surviving Financial Abuse. She dedicated it to Tanya and to all the women Truth Matters had helped. The book came out 18 months after the trial. It sold modestly at first, but then a popular podcast featured it and sales exploded. Suddenly Simone was doing interviews, appearing on talk shows, being asked to speak at events around the country. The attention was overwhelming, but it also brought more women to Truth Matters. Women who'd read the book recognized themselves in the stories and realized they needed help. Simone hired more staff, expanded the office, started satellite programs in 3 other cities. Truth Matters grew from a small local nonprofit to a regional organization making a real difference. Through it all, she stayed in touch with Tanya. The girl was 14 now, still thriving with Mrs. Baptiste, still excelling in school. She'd become interested in law, talking about maybe becoming a prosecutor someday. Because of what you saw in that courtroom? Simone asked during one of their approved phone calls. Partly, Tanya said. But also because I want to help people who can't help themselves. Like I did for you, but in a bigger way. You already helped in a big way. You know what I mean? I want to make it my career, not just a one-time thing. Simone smiled. You're going to be amazing at whatever you do. Mrs. Baptiste says the same thing. So does my teacher. Sometimes I almost believe it. Believe it, Simone said firmly. You're one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, and I'm not just saying that because you saved me. I'm saying it because it's true. On the 2-year anniversary of the trial, Simone organized a fundraising gala for Truth Matters. It was held in a hotel ballroom with 200 guests paying to attend. The money raised would fund expansion into 2 more cities. She'd invited Mrs. Baptiste and Tanya, who arrived dressed in their Sunday best. Tanya looked so different from the ragged girl who'd burst into the courtroom, taller, healthier, confident. But her eyes still held that same fierce determination. "This is amazing," Tanya said, looking around the ballroom. "You did all this?" "We did all this," Simone corrected. "None of this would exist without you." During her speech that night, Simone called Tanya up to the stage. The girl looked terrified but came anyway. "This is Tanya Brooks," Simone told the crowd. 2 years ago she walked into a courtroom and changed my life. She's the reason Truth Matters exists. She's the reason I'm standing here tonight. She taught me that courage isn't about being big or powerful or having resources. Courage is about doing what's right even when it costs you something. The crowd applauded. Tanya blushed but stood tall. "I want to announce tonight that we're establishing the Tanya Brooks Scholarship Fund," Simone continued. "This fund will provide full college scholarships to young women from difficult backgrounds who've shown exceptional courage and integrity. Because if Tanya has taught me anything, it's that character isn't about privilege or comfort. It's about choices. And Tanya chose truth when it would have been easier to stay silent." The applause was thunderous. Tanya's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Later, in a quiet corner of the ballroom, Simone and Tanya sat together while Mrs. Baptiste chatted with other guests. "You didn't have to do all this," Tanya said quietly. "Yes, I did," Simone replied. "You saved me, Tanya. Not just from losing money but from losing myself. Derek had convinced me I was crazy, unstable, worthless. You showed me the truth. You gave me back my reality. I just told what I saw." "Exactly. And in doing that, you changed everything. Not just for me but for the hundreds of women we've helped since then. And for all the women we'll help in the future. Your courage created ripples, Tanya. It's still creating ripples." Tanya was quiet for a moment. "My mom used to say that every person has a purpose. That we're all here to help each other somehow. I think maybe my purpose was being in that alley at that exact time, seeing what I saw, having the courage to speak up." "Maybe," Simone said. "Or maybe that was just the beginning of your purpose. Maybe the rest is still unfolding. What about you? What's your purpose?" Simone looked around the ballroom at all the people who'd come to support Truth Matters, at the staff who worked so hard to help women in crisis, at the survivors who'd become advocates. "I think my purpose is to take the worst thing that ever happened to me and turn it into something that helps others," she said. "To make sure Derek's betrayal didn't just destroy me, it transformed me into someone who could make a difference." "That's a good purpose," Tanya said. "So is yours." They sat together in comfortable silence. These two people from completely different worlds who'd been brought together by circumstance and stayed together by choice. The woman who'd been saved and the girl who'd saved her. Both of them building futures brighter than their pasts. 3 years after the trial, Truth Matters had helped over 300 women. Some of them went through divorces. Others used the information they learned to protect themselves within their marriages, setting up separate accounts and understanding their rights. A few discovered their suspicions were unfounded and were able to rebuild trust with their partners. All of them left with more knowledge and more power than they'd arrived with. Simone's book had been translated into 6 languages. She'd been featured in national magazines, invited to speak at universities, even consulted for a television show about financial crimes. Her TED Talk about recognizing gaslighting had been viewed over 2 million times. But more important than the recognition was the work itself. Every time a woman came through the doors of Truth Matters and left with hope, Simone felt like she'd won again. Like she'd taken another piece back from Derek. Not that Derek was much of a presence in her life anymore. He'd served 3 years of his 5-year sentence and been released on parole. She'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he was working as a manager at a chain restaurant, living in a small apartment, driving a used car. Everything he'd schemed and stolen for was gone. Gabrielle had moved to another state, her reputation in ruins. The last Simone heard, she was working retail and still dealing with lawsuits from her former clients. Simone felt no satisfaction in their downfall. She simply didn't think about them much anymore. They were part of her past and she was focused on her future. She'd started dating again tentatively at first. A few coffee dates that went nowhere. A brief relationship with a genuinely nice man that fizzled when they realized they wanted different things. She wasn't in a hurry. She'd learned the hard way what happened when you rushed into commitment without really knowing someone. Then she met Brandon Clark at a fundraiser for a domestic violence shelter. He was a social worker who specialized in helping men deal with anger issues, the kind of work that tried to stop abuse before it started. They talked for hours that night about their work, their philosophies, their belief that people could change if they wanted to. Brandon had been divorced too, and he understood the complicated emotions that came with that territory. "I'm not looking for someone to complete me," Simone told him on their third date. "I'm already complete. I'm looking for someone to complement me." "I like that," Brandon said, smiling. "I'm not looking for someone to fix either. I'm looking for a partner. Someone who has their own life and goals but wants to share parts of it with me." It was refreshing, this honest conversation about expectations and boundaries. Derek had never talked like this. Derek had told her what she wanted to hear, then slowly twisted reality until she didn't know what was real anymore. Brandon was different. He was direct. He was honest. He didn't play games. They took things slowly. Dinner dates. Long phone conversations. Gradually introducing each other to friends and family. Simone watched carefully for red flags, for signs of controlling behavior, for anything that felt like manipulation. She didn't find any. Brandon was exactly what he appeared to be. A good man trying to make a difference in the world, someone who respected her independence and admired her work. When they'd been dating for 8 months, Brandon invited her to a charity gala his organization was hosting. She said yes, then spent far too long picking out a dress. Cheryl came over to help. "This one," Cheryl said, holding up a deep blue dress that brought out Simone's eyes. "You look amazing." "I'm nervous," Simone admitted. "What? You've been to a million events like this." "Not as someone's date. Not with someone I actually care about." Cheryl's expression softened. "You really like him, don't you?" "I think I might love him," Simone whispered, like saying it too loud might jinx it. "And that terrifies me." "Love is scary," Cheryl agreed. "Especially after what you've been through. But Simone, you can't let Derek steal this from you too. You can't let his betrayal make you afraid to love again. What if I'm wrong about Brandon? What if I'm seeing what I want to see again? You're not the same person you were with Derek. You're stronger now. You trust yourself more. And you've spent 8 months watching this man carefully. What have you seen?" Simone thought about it. She'd seen Brandon deal with difficult situations at work without losing his temper. She'd seen him treat service workers with respect. She'd met his family and friends, all of whom spoke highly of him. She'd seen him consistently show up when he said he would, do what he promised to do, and admit when he was wrong about something. "I've seen someone who matches his words with his actions," Simone said slowly. "Someone who doesn't make excuses. Someone who treats me like an equal partner." "Then trust that," Cheryl said. "Trust yourself." The gala was beautiful. Simone wore the blue dress and felt confident. Brandon looked handsome in his tuxedo, and he introduced her to everyone as, "My girlfriend Simone, who runs an amazing organization helping women." Not, "My girlfriend who used to be married to a criminal." Not, "My girlfriend who got screwed over in her divorce." Just recognition of who she was now, what she'd built, what she'd accomplished. Halfway through the evening, while they were dancing, Brandon pulled her a little closer. "I know we're taking things slow," he said quietly, "and I respect that. But I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About us. I'm not going anywhere." Simone looked up at him, searching his face for signs of deception. She found only sincerity. "I'm serious too," she said, "and that scares me a little. I know it does, and I understand why. But I promise you I'm going to earn your trust every single day. I'm going to show you that not all men are like your ex-husband." He'd kept that promise. Every day in small ways and large, Brandon showed her who he was. And slowly, carefully, Simone let herself believe in the possibility of love again. Meanwhile, Tanya was finishing her sophomore year of high school with straight A's. She'd become captain of the debate team, won several regional competitions, and was already being recruited by colleges. The scholarship fund Simone had established in her name had grown substantially, helping 5 other girls so far. "I've been thinking," Tanya said during one of their now regular phone calls. "When I finish high school I want to do a gap year. Work with Truth Matters, maybe in one of the new locations. Learn the work from the inside before I go to college." "You don't have to do that," Simone said. "The scholarship will cover college whether you take a gap year or not." "I know, but I want to. I want to help other women the way we helped you. And I want to understand that work better before I decide what to study in college." "Mrs. Baptiste says it's a mature decision." "It is," Simone agreed. "And if that's what you want to do, I'll make it happen. We'd be lucky to have you." "Really? Really? You started this whole thing, Tanya. You're part of Truth Matters whether you work here or not. But having you join us would be an honor." On Tanya's 16th birthday, Simone threw her a party at the Truth Matters office. Tanya's debate team came, along with Mrs. Baptiste's extended family, some of the staff from Truth Matters, and women they'd helped who wanted to meet the girl whose courage had started it all. "I can't believe you did this," Tanya said, looking around at the decorations, the cake, the people who'd come to celebrate her. "You deserve to be celebrated," Simone said simply. "You changed my life. You changed a lot of lives. I just told the truth." "Exactly. And that matters more than you know." Later that night, after most of the guests had left, Simone gave Tanya her gift. It was a necklace with a small pendant, a scale of justice on one side and an inscription on the other, "Truth matters. You matter." Tanya's eyes filled with tears as she put it on. "I love it. I'll never take it off." "You don't have to. Just remember what it means. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. You matter." "Thank you," Tanya whispered, hugging her tight. "For everything. For believing in me. For helping me. For being like the mom I don't have anymore." Simone's heart clenched. "Oh, sweetheart. Your mom will always be your mom. No one can replace her. But I'm honored to be someone who cares about you, who supports you, who wants the best for you." "That's what moms do," Tanya said simply. Standing in the Truth Matters office, holding this remarkable young woman who'd saved her, Simone realized she'd found something she hadn't been looking for. Not just purpose, not just healing, but family. A chosen family built on trust and respect and mutual support. This, she thought, was what victory looked like. Not crushing her enemies. Not getting revenge in any traditional sense. But building a life so full of meaning and connection that the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her became just a chapter in a much larger, more beautiful story. 4 years after the trial, Simone was invited to speak at a charity gala for homeless youth. The event was being held at one of the city's most prestigious hotels, and the speaker's fee would be donated to the organization. She wore a deep purple dress that made her dark skin glow, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo. Brandon was her plus one, looking proud and handsome beside her. They'd been together for 2 years now, and while they weren't rushing toward marriage, they'd moved in together and were building a life that felt solid and real. The ballroom was stunning, filled with the city's most influential people. Simone wasn't intimidated anymore by these settings. She'd learned she belonged anywhere she chose to be. She was reviewing her notes before the speech when she saw him. Derek. He was across the ballroom, wearing a suit that had seen better days, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. He was working the event as catering staff. Their eyes met across the crowded room. She saw the recognition, the shock, the shame flash across his face. He looked older, tired, defeated. Whatever confidence he'd once carried was long gone. Simone felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pain. Just a distant acknowledgement that this person had once been important to her and now wasn't. Derek started to move toward her, but she turned away, back to her conversation with Brandon and the event organizer. "Simone Patterson is one of our city's most inspiring advocates," the organizer was saying. "Her organization has helped hundreds of women escape financial abuse, and her book has reached thousands more. We're honored to have her as our keynote speaker tonight." "I'm honored to be here," Simone said graciously. Throughout the cocktail hour, she was aware of Derek's presence at the edges of the room. He was serving drinks, clearing plates, doing the work of someone invisible. She wondered if anyone here knew his story, knew that he'd once been a successful businessman who'd thrown it all away through greed and cruelty. Probably not. He was just another face in the catering uniform. When it was time for speeches, Simone took the stage. The lights were bright, the crowd attentive. She spoke about the importance of supporting homeless youth, about how many young people ended up on the streets through no fault of their own. 4 years ago, she said, a 12-year-old girl living in an alley changed my life. She was homeless through a series of circumstances that weren't her fault. A sick mother, an incarcerated father, a foster system that failed to protect her. But despite having nothing, she had something that mattered more than money or status or power. She had courage. She had integrity. She had a belief that truth mattered. She told Tanya's story, with the girl's permission, of course. Tanya was 18 now, working part-time at Truth Matters while finishing her senior year of high school, preparing to start college in the fall with a full scholarship. "That girl taught me that your circumstances don't define your character," Simone continued. She was living behind a dumpster, but she saw injustice happening and refused to stay silent. She risked her own safety to tell the truth. And in doing so, she didn't just save me. She started a ripple effect that has helped hundreds of women. She glanced toward where Derek stood against the wall, holding an empty tray. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe. or just recognition of how completely their positions had reversed. The people we help, the lives we touch, those effects last long after we're gone, Simone said. That homeless girl is now a thriving young woman headed to college. The nonprofit that started from her courage now operates in 5 cities. The women we've helped are rebuilding their lives, teaching their daughters to recognize abuse, breaking cycles that might have continued for generations. She shared statistics about the impact of Truth Matters. The number of women helped. The amount of hidden assets recovered. The divorces finalized fairly. The lives rebuilt. I stand before you tonight not as a victim, she said, her voice strong and clear, but as a survivor who became a fighter, who turned pain into purpose, who learned that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. Building something so beautiful and meaningful from your broken pieces that the person who broke you becomes irrelevant to your story. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Brandon was beaming at her from the front row. The event organizer was wiping away tears. As Simone left the stage, she had to pass close to where Derek stood. He stepped forward slightly, like he might try to speak to her. She looked at him directly for the first time. Really looked at him. Saw the lines stress had carved into his face. Saw the cheap suit and scuffed shoes. Saw the remnants of the man who'd once been her whole world and meant nothing to her now. Congratulations, he said quietly. You've done really well for yourself. It was the first time she'd heard his voice in 4 years. It stirred nothing in her. No old feelings, no anger, no pain. Nothing. Thank you, she said politely, like she might thank any stranger. Simone, he started. I need to get back to my boyfriend, she interrupted gently but firmly. Excuse me. She walked away without looking back. Didn't give him a chance to apologize or explain or try to worm his way into her thoughts. He didn't deserve her attention, her forgiveness, or her anger. He deserved her indifference. Brandon met her at the edge of the ballroom, pulling her into his arms. You were amazing, he said, kissing her forehead. Did you see him? She asked. The server who was staring at you? Yeah, I figured that was him. Are you okay? I'm perfect, she said and meant it. I looked at him and felt nothing. He's just nothing to me now. That's the best revenge, Brandon said, echoing her speech. Building a life so good that the people who hurt you become footnotes. Later that night, back in their apartment, Simone stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights. Brandon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How far I've come, she said. 4 years ago, I was in that courtroom being humiliated, thinking my life was over. I thought losing that case meant losing everything. But you didn't lose. No. But even if I had, I would have survived. I would have rebuilt. Because that's what we do. We survive, we rebuild, we grow. Is that what you tell the women at Truth Matters? That's what I learned from them. And from Tanya. And from you. She turned in his arms to face him. Derek tried to destroy me. He wanted to leave me with nothing. No money, no dignity, no hope. Instead, he freed me to become someone I'm actually proud of. You should be proud. You've helped so many people. We've helped so many people, she corrected. You, me, Tanya, everyone at Truth Matters, all the volunteers and supporters. It takes a community to heal, to help, to make real change. Brandon kissed her softly. I love you, you know that? I know. I love you too. Think you'll ever want to get married again? The question didn't scare her anymore. Maybe. Someday. When we're both ready. But there's no rush. I'm happy with what we have right now. Me too. They stood together on the balcony, 2 people who'd found each other after heartbreak, building something new and honest and real. The next morning, Simone got a call from Tanya. I saw the video of your speech, Tanya said excitedly. Someone posted it online and it's getting thousands of views. You were amazing. Thank you, sweetheart. How was your day? Good. I helped 3 women at the office yesterday. One of them reminded me of you. Her husband was hiding money and making her think she was crazy. Were you able to help her? I think so. I told her about the resources we have, connected her with Ms. Rodriguez for the legal consultation. She cried when she left, but like good crying, you know? Like she finally felt heard. That's the best feeling in the world, Simone said. Knowing you made a difference. I learned from the best, Tanya said. You showed me how to turn anger into action, pain into purpose. That's what I want to do with my life. You're already doing it. And I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you too. I saw the comments on the video. Some people were saying your ex-husband was working the event as a server. Is that true? It is. How did that feel? Honestly? It felt like closure. He's living his consequences. I'm living my dreams. That's all I needed to see. Good, Tanya said fiercely. He doesn't deserve any more of your energy than that. After they hung up, Simone thought about the girl Tanya had been and the woman she was becoming. Thought about the terrified woman she'd been in that courtroom and the confident advocate she'd become. She thought about Derek, working as catering staff at events celebrating people who actually contributed to society. She thought about Gabrielle, whose name was still mud in professional circles. But mostly she thought about the future. About the women Truth Matters would help tomorrow, next month, next year. About the book she was writing about building self-worth after betrayal. About the nonprofit expansion into 3 more cities. About the life she was building with Brandon. About Tanya's upcoming graduation and college journey. Derek had tried to destroy her, but instead he'd freed her to become something more than she'd ever imagined. He'd meant to leave her with nothing, but his betrayal had pushed her to build everything. That was the sweetest revenge of all, not his destruction but her construction. Not his suffering but her thriving. Not proving him wrong, but becoming so successful that proving anything to him was completely unnecessary. She no longer cared what Derek thought, what he felt, or what happened to him. He was irrelevant to her story now. And that indifference, that freedom, that ability to look at the person who'd hurt her most and feel absolutely nothing, that was victory. Simone smiled, picked up her phone, and texted Tanya, "Dinner this weekend? I want to hear about your college applications." Then she texted Brandon, "Love you. See you tonight." Then she opened her laptop and got back to work, helping women build new lives from broken pieces. Just like she had. Just like hundreds more would, with her help. The perfect revenge wasn't making Derek suffer. It was building a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so full of purpose that his betrayal became nothing more than the prologue to her real story. And what a story it was.